Hi, I'm Andy Acton.
And I'm Chris Strevens.
This is Dentology, the Business of Dentistry podcast. It's funny, isn't it, how there's so many things we do in life routinely, but we don't often pause to think about the tweaks, the improvements, the adjustments we can make. And that conversation with Ashley Latter around discussing fees falls into that category, doesn't it?
It does, and I think it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because people have almost like created their own boundaries for not necessary reasons. I love the story he told about. I think it was Mrs. Jones. The example of someone saying something that impacts upon that person so strongly that, and it might have just been a quip, but it has affected the way that they quote pricing for 5, 10, 15 years. One comment.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I think people might be interested in the conversation about, do dentists value themselves? It was a really good conversation, and this is part 2. We have spoke to Ashley before. We spoke to him. That's episode 131 for people who wanted to kind of listen to both parts. But it was a very interesting conversation
about communication. Most of them aren't about communication and relationship.
Sure.
Again,
if you enjoyed a Dentology podcast, if you could follow us, that would be absolutely amazing. And if you were able to leave us a review, we'd be very appreciative of that as well.
Yes, please.
Whenever we get a returning guest, it's always quite nice, isn't it? It's always like speaking to an old friend.
It is. It's like the part 2, the part 2, or whatever they call it, of conversation. And it'll be interesting, to develop it further, as they say.
It will be. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're very fortunate. We have Ashley Latter join us again. Ashley's an author, an experienced business trainer and coach. Welcome back, Ashley. How are you?
Yeah, good, Andy, Chris. Yeah, not bad at all, thank you. My voice is a bit croaky. But besides that, I'm great, thank you.
Well, that's the byproduct of being a successful trainer who's always out training teams and lecturing and talking.
I hope you've got some lubrication just in case.
I've got plenty of water.
Exactly. Good. And for those that are regular listeners will recognise Ashley's voice because he's been with us before, back in February. So that was episode 131, if you wanted to listen back to that. And you can get the background on Ashley and the introduction to him. But we wanted to do a part 2 to basically just dig in a bit deeper around discussing fees because it's such a critical part of dentistry. It's so important. Yeah. We wanted to kind of dig a bit further and see.
And he is the Meister. He is the Meister.
Exactly. Just to start with, Ashley, I guess slightly provocative. Do dentists value themselves?
Oh, wow. What a question. So this is a massive generalization. And I'm only, 30 years experience of training and coaching dentists all over the world. And the simple answer is yes and no. Obviously some do, but I think a lot of them don't. And they don't think about the value that they actually bring to a patient's lives. And if they sat down and analysed it, I think in more detail, I think they'd have a different opinion about themselves. And I think, which I'm sure we'll go into today, but they get, I'm trying to think of the word here, and bear with me because I have done a lot of speaking and lecturing recently, so I am a bit worn out and tired this morning, but I think they get battered a lot by patients and the press, or perceived patients or the press. So I'll give you an example. This happens all the time. So we dentists will say, they'll honestly, openly admit on my courses that this is an area that they do struggle. They do struggle discussing fees. And when we dig down into it, it can be a bit of a therapy session sometimes, but when we dig really deep into it, it could be a sarcastic comment that Mrs. Jones made 3 years ago when she turned round aggressively and said, "Am I paying for your holiday or car?" When a fee was quoted to Mrs. Jones. And that tends to live with the dentist. So, and they now Mrs. Jones could be, it could just be one patient who just made one really nasty comment. But then what happens is they pick up on it and they remember every little sarky comment, like, or every phrase or every negative body language a patient gives them when they quote a fee. And when you analyze it, and I always say to a dentist, how many times in a year do you discuss fees? And, 7, 8, 10 times a day. I said, well, okay, so 10 times a day, 50 times in a week, and times by how many weeks you work, you're quoting a lot of fees. It could be thousands of times. And you always remember the 2 or 3 sarky comments. And you forget about the 99.9% of patients who will just pay your fee and are happy to do so and are grateful for what you've done for them. But they tend to remember the 2 or 3 or 4 patients. Now, one could have been saying it nastily, and 2 or 3 just said it sarcastically,
Yeah, so they could have just been taking a piss, couldn't they, really? But it sits there,
And it sits with them. So there's a long-winded answer to a very short question. And it sits with them, and they just can't seem to let go.
But I think I think a human condition is, I think we all have a negativity bias, don't we? I think if something happens that's not in our favour, we tend to hang on to that way longer, and it sits a lot deeper than those things that go well. So I guess from that, it sounds like there is a link between how dentists value themselves and their comfort to discuss fees. Because if this little thing's sitting on their shoulder all the time and it's kind of chirping away in their ear, that is going to influence how they feel about discussing fees.
Well, what happens is, guys, it's a great question, by the way. What happens is that they think everyone is focused on this. And then they start discounting in their head.
Yeah. Was that fiscal cranial drag, wasn't it, or something?
Yeah, it's a very, very common thing. And I would put it to you that for every course that I deliver, and I deliver 1 2-day ethical sales and communication course, I would say every week. So 42, 43 weeks a year, I'm delivering this 2-day course. And I would tell you at least half the dentists in the room would put their hands up and say, I discount on a regular basis.
But don't tell the client. Wow. And is there a in your time, have you noticed a difference in younger dentists, older dentists? Is there an age, a demographic, or anything that sort of, you can sort of say, young people, they're better at it or they're worse at it, or not really?
I wouldn't say not really. I think it's just right across the board. I think possibly who they work with, if they're an associate, who they work with possibly could have some common denominator. But no, I don't think it's. The only thing I would say is if that they are a more mature dentist, is that it's cost them a lot more than obviously their young dentist.
And is it harder? Is it harder with the teach an old dog new tricks? Is it harder to get them to see and make a change, or not really?
No, we can get them to make a change, because what I do is, I spend hours on this on the program, but we go really deep into, well, actually, if you're, can I give you a great example?
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Right. So we had I've just recently done a course overseas, and it's a long way, and I don't want to probably tell the country, because it will point the person out. But we had a dentist on a course very recently. This was in March, and I was overseas, and so it doesn't matter wherever it is. And this dentist openly admitted that he's discounting virtually every time he quotes a fee. And in the country that he operates, it's all private. So that's a lot of discounting. And now when we put the sums up on the board, it was, I can't remember, it was something like $150,000 a year. That was a big chunk of fees he was discounting. Now, this particular dentist works 6 days a week.
Wow.
Now, he was trying to convince me he loves it, and that's why he does it 6 days a week. Okay. Not sure about that one.
I like you trying to
maybe
convince
if you
me.
put the 150 on the bottom line, you might not have to love it for 6 days a week.
Well, there you go. You see, there is a link. You see, I love doing this, but I don't want to do it 6 days a week. But there is a link, you see. And how many weeks do you have off a year? I think it was like 3, possibly 4 at the most.
Wow.
And here's the challenge. He had a horrendous cough whilst he was on the course. Horrendous. And he's been ill. He's been in bed for a couple of weeks. He's just recovering. I thought he had COVID, and he didn't. But you see, the guys, I think he's also keeps fit. He's a big guy. Now there's a link here. Because he's discounting his fees, he has to work longer hours. He's constantly running late with each appointment on his appointments, which puts more stress on him, which over a period of time, and then he's coming home trying to keep fit and juggle wife and everything else. Well, eventually it just catches up in you, and that's why he was, really, really poorly. And this guy has been a dentist for, I don't know, 10 years or so. So that's like $1.5 million worth of discount he's given. And the patient doesn't even know a discount's been given.
I say that's the thing. They don't even know, do they?
Yeah.
But how fascinating from what you say that actually, if you get more comfortable with discussing fees and sticking to the price you've agreed, it impacts on the time of your family, your health, how
Everything.
you feel within yourself or your well-being, how you communicate with your team. So it's intriguing that actually being comfortable with the money conversation permeates through so many aspects of your life that aren't obvious.
But, and here's another thing as well. Here's another thing. This is a common. This is common. So what they do is the people that discount the most will then spend. Let me just see how I phrase this. But they will spend hours trying to find the cheapest hotel to the venue to save money.
Yeah.
So
and they're giving it away.
It's just so it just goes on and on and on. Because then you're spending hours researching to try and save money all the time on different things. And what I say to dentists is look, you've got to develop your technical skills all the time, but you've got to keep developing those communication and the fees discussion. It's got to be ongoing all the time. Because if you do this, you will get a greater return back on investment on your time, but it also impacts every other part of your life as well.
Yeah.
Because you're not spending hours to try and save a few pounds on a crappy hotel room near a venue.
Yeah.
But on that point, Ashley, I think where you value others, I think that generally makes it easier for you to value your own proposition. And particularly within dentistry, I think there is a kind of a cohort of dentists who like looking for free things or low value things because, that's just within any market, you're going to have those people. But I think that can, at a subliminal level, undermine your own proposition. Because if you're constantly hunting around for discounts and doing things cheaply, surely that has to impact on how you feel about your service and how you price your service.
Well, you start cutting corners. Possibly, or use, I can't, I've got examples of this, but maybe you use materials that, or I don't know, but 100%. And I always say to dentists, I say, look, you know what, deliver some treatment, whatever it is, if it's a cosmetic case or an implant case, and just bring the patient back 3 months after. And sit with them, check to see how your work's getting on, check to see everything's okay. And spend 15 minutes chatting to your patient. Get them a coffee and have a chat with them and ask them, how have things been since you've had this treatment? What difference has it made to your lives? What impact has it had? Give me examples. And you sit there with them and they'll tell you the major benefits they've gained, and it completely outweighs what they invested in your treatment.
Yeah,
and that gives you the confidence then to say, actually, you know what, I'm worth this.
Yeah.
I'm worth this.
Yeah. Around kind of discussing fees, the money conversation, is there a standard process to follow that makes that money conversation easier for people as a guide?
What, when you're actually quoting it or discussing it?
Yeah, when you're discussing it, for people that might be listening to this and, they constantly feel uneasy or they don't have a formula that they follow, is there a kind of a golden rule that people should always follow when they get to that point when they're going to discuss fees?
I'll give you, you've asked some great questions here, but I'll give you an example of this. Okay, so there will be a lot of, I'll give you an example. So there's a lot of dentists that come on my courses who have done short-term orthodontic courses or Invisalign, and they want to do more of this type of dentistry. We have a lot of them, and we help them in a big way. So we always say, or I always suggest, rather than saying the word cost, take the word cost away and just say that your investment, Mrs. Jones, in this treatment is, or your fee. But the word investment is like you're getting a big return. You're getting a return back rather than it's where cost can sound quite negative. And then tell the patient what's included in the fee, what they're going to be going through, but what's included, and use words like bespoke, design, skilled technician, manufacturer, all these words, but tell the story. So, for example, don't just say you're going to get a set of retainers at the end. They don't know, most patients probably don't know what retainers are. So if you just explain to them, at the end of treatment, teeth will often move if not monitored, and we take that part seriously. So we're going to give you some retainers to retain your smile, and we're going to monitor you thereafter to make sure that your teeth stay straight. And just saying this simple language makes a big difference. And when they, if they write it down, rehearse it, and then you realize actually the patient gets a lot for what they pay.
I think simplicity of language is key. It's easy. We all become a bit jargonistic very quickly, don't we? Because we assume
too clinical, too technical. Yeah.
Correct. So you've got to stop using the jargon, and because the other thing as well is when you confuse patients, they tend not to do anything because they're confused. So use simple language, and it really will make a big difference.
Yeah. If you could wave a magic wand, who would you have in the practice to have the money conversation? Who would you have discussing fees in a practice? Who's the best person?
Well, I think everybody in the practice needs to be good at discussing fees. I think your reception team, because they will take inquiries at the desk, and they need to be comfortable at discussing the fees with the patients. They must answer the phone with no prejudices. And they answer phones with prejudices. They think their treatment, and again, it's a big generalization, but they think that their treatment's expensive. Well, if they haven't got the problem, their treatment will always be expensive. So you've got to have, receptionists have got to be comfortable at discussing fees. In fact, to be honest with you, they're probably the most important people, because sometimes the patient will see the dentist and they won't give the dentist an objection because they don't want to, it's uncomfortable for them. Yeah. But they'll give the objection to the receptionist. So the receptionist needs to be comfortable and be able to back up and, of course, ask for the money, So receptionists need to be trained. I think dentists need to be able to discuss fees.
And do they all come on your course?
And ideally as well, if some practices have treatment coordinators, then they could be the best people to discuss the fees with the patient in a treatment consultation. So I think everybody needs to be skilled at it and
does the support team come on your courses, Ashley?
Yeah, we have all teams. Yeah, so
that's the way that you can make sure there's a commonality of message.
Correct. And I think that the most important, I've just come back from a practice in the Lake District where we worked with the whole team. It was a long day yesterday, which I think why my voice is gone a little bit. But yeah, we trained the whole team yesterday. There's 22 delegates. But everybody needs to be confident. The nurses as well, because they need to kick the dentist and say, Charles, the correct, hey, you're worth it. So
it's interesting. I always remember we did something years ago. I remember sitting when we used to do consultancy, and we stopped it. And I remember sitting talking to this dentist, and he was like, "Yeah, great, I've done it really well." And then I sat in the reception, and basically, you can the patient came out and said, "Oh, that was expensive," and the receptionist, "Yeah, it is, isn't it?"
Yeah.
And it was like, "Well, there we go. You just wasted, that treatment time and planning." And it must be quite hard, I'd imagine, when you get all the team together. Because I presume not only have you probably got to change some attitudes, but you've also got to change some attitudes with people who are with their bosses. And that must be quite a challenge sometimes to get them all singing on the same hymn sheet, I'd imagine.
This week's episode is brought to you in partnership with Ultimate Dental Business. We know as guys who have supported dentists for over 25 years and through hosting this podcast that building business skills in dentistry is vital. Time and again, we hear from dentists who tell us that they find the business side of dentistry the most challenging. And we know that stress and pressure comes from doing things we don't feel well equipped to do. That is why we are delighted to be part of Ultimate Dental Business, the new dental business hub delivering top-tier business training for dentists. Founded by Dr. Brad Thornton and Dr. Krupal Shah, Ultimate Dental Business is a response to the lack of robust dental business education currently available. Through our effective collective discussions with dentists, it was clear they most needed good structure and effective guidance to give them the knowledge and tools to be successful dental business owners and to create a business that serves them rather than the business that takes all their time and energy to keep going. To find out more about developing your own business education, click on the link in the show notes or go to ultimatedentalbusiness.com.
Absolutely. And I was with a practice manager a few weeks ago on a course, and she openly admitted on the program that, she had this issue. And then she realized when she pays the bills how much the costs are. And, she went back to the boss, said, look, we need to put our fees up, and yeah.
Actually, do you think there's a disconnect between the public's perception of the cost of dentistry and the reality and whether partly this sits linked to the NHS of some sort or other? So a dental practice is constantly kind of fighting against the perception of what it costs, and they feel they have to justify their fees.
Well, I could spend an hour on this question, but I think it all depends on the practice and also the type of patient that you've got. So let me give you an example. So if you are a mixed practice or an NHS practice and you want to do more private, well, if you're charging, I can't remember what the NHS price is now for a crown. Well, let's say it's £310, I think it is in England, or something like that. I think it might have gone up recently. And you want to present a private crown, and your private crown is, say, 550 or 600. Then I always say to dentists, not everyone is going to buy the private crown, because a lot of your patients, if you're an NHS practice, basically your patient base is anyone that's got a pulse, anyone that breathes. You're going to take all types of patients. Now, some of those patients, you could make the fee £320, £10 more expensive than an NHS crown, and they still wouldn't buy it. They still go for the cheapest option because they don't really care about what the major benefits are of having a private crown if it's more aesthetically pleasing. So I always say it all depends on the type of practice you are, and also the type of patient that you've got coming into your practice. If you are a fully private practice, I go to a fully private one, I pay a monthly fee, then I expect the fees to be higher than if I was walking into a National Health Service practice. I'd expect them to be. So I think there's a lot of considerations, how the practice looks, the decor, the uniforms, all these things all count, I think.
And it's
I
interesting.
hope I've answered your question there.
Yeah, no, you have. And I think a lot of it is that market pre-positioning, isn't there?
Correct.
We all know if we walk down a high street and you see 2 or 3 different restaurants, the look and feel of those restaurants will probably give an indication as to what the price point is. And you're saying the same thing applies in
the look of a
dentistry.
practice makes a difference, doesn't it?
Yes,
If you've got one that's tatty and bits and doesn't look very cared for, and then you've got one that's super sparkly, people don't know the quality of the dentistry.
No.
They just see that and they go, "Oh, right, I'll have a look at that."
Another point, actually.
What they can judge is the surroundings. There's about 30 things they can judge. The toilets, the weeds in the garden, the litter outside. My bugbear is pictures up on the wall with Plutarch. You've got to get. Well,
Or light bulbs that aren't working. We did a practice valuation years ago for this super swanky implant. I mean, really lovely. And then they asked us to do a sort of like a viewing thing that we don't do anymore. But we said to them, you need to change these light bulbs. And they didn't. And basically everybody focused on the fact that all the downlighters weren't working. It was like mad, there's 14 downlighters. And it was like, you're looking at these things, but those are the things we see as consumers.
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll give you, and I always say to dentists, it says, walk into your building on a Sunday and walk in as a patient and look round and from the car park onwards and go in and judge. And then, because the problem is that they walk past the stains on the wall every day.
Used to it, yeah.
They get used to it. And I'm the same. I've got a training centre here. And one of the slates in the corner it's rained a lot recently, so there's a little damp patch there. But, Bill Schaefer, who's a very well-known dentist, he comes and helps me teach the courses, and he comes up and says, "You still not changed that slate in the corner there?"
I've been travelling for 2 weeks. What do you expect me to do?
I know. I said, well, I did change it. It's just the new rain has come through. But you see, I walk past it. And that's what we do, don't we? We don't notice. We're so focused on the dentistry, and I'm so focused on my slides and making sure the course is great. But actually, your delegates sit here and they say, "Oh, there's your slate in the corner is a bit damp."
Have you got like one of your best stories of people that you've turned round? Someone where they've come on your course and they've been discounting, your $1.5 million or whatever it might be. And then you've then done a follow up or something with them 12 months later and you found out they've been transformed as a practice financially. What's your sort of, one of your go-tos? There must be a go-to story.
There is. And I can't quote a name, but there was one particular, and I'm trying to think of someone in the UK, but there was one particular lady, and I remember vividly, and we spoke about 6 months after, and she actually brought me a nice bottle of wine and as a thank you, but she was discounting. I think it was virtually every time, and the thing was, it was only like £30 to £40, but because she was discounting 5 or 6 times a day.
I say, 10 times that, whatever.
Times by 5. And it was something like, £35,000, £40,000. And she was very kind on the course that she volunteered this information, and we got the figures up on the flip chart here. And I think she was just absolutely amazed at how much, and she'd been a dentist for about 15 years as well. So she'd given something like £250,000 at the top of my head. I mean, I've got hundreds of these stories, but this one, because I vividly said, I'm going to put your name, I'm going to give you a call in 6 months. And we always have a follow-up Zoom call anyway with the whole course. And she told them she made progress, but I put it in my diary and I took a real shine to this lady. And I think as well, she traveled a long way to do the course with me. So it's one of those I'm dying to find out. We spoke for about half an hour on the phone. I was walking around the park and she said, something? What was strange is I've not had one patient bat an eyelid. And that's what always happens, is that we don't have
It was
anybody.
all about
Nobody said
her.
anything.
Nothing to do with
Yeah.
her patients. It was all about
Nothing.
her.
And, it made a big difference, because I actually said to her, I said, I want you to do two things for me when in a few months. She said, what were those? I said, well, the first one is book a holiday. Take your family on a nice holiday. And that way, you can see something you got for your money. But the second thing is book on a course that you've always wanted to do. And when you go there, stay in a bloody nice hotel as well. And she did both of those things. And, so, yeah, that was one single case. It was a lady, she was based in London, and she came up to Manchester to take the course, because I think she missed the London date, and she didn't want to delay taking the course. So I did take a shine to, and that was probably one of my favorite stories.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because when you talk about it, because dentists in general don't really understand how they make money, as in profitability, they miss that connection by, you're giving away £30 or whatever it is, you've given away 35,000. That's actually on your bottom line. That's because you're still paying all the costs for it. The only thing that you've done is cut your income line. It's an interesting one, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, there's I'm no accountant, but we do this on the course. But if you discount, by just 10%, so if you're selling a £600 crown and you're not £10, you're not 10% off, which is £60, so you didn't find 40, you can actually lose about 25% of your net profit by doing that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because all your costs are the same. Nothing's changed. It's all you've changed is your income line.
Correct.
And I think people don't. It's fascinating, isn't it, that you have to give them the correlation between that that says you realise what you're doing, because then you can stay in a nice hotel, then you can buy your Ferrari, then you can do this, and all you've got to do is stop giving a discount.
Yeah,
it's mad, isn't it?
But then that's kind of the financial.
Yeah, it's
education
amazing.
piece.
Yeah,
we've been talking about discussing fees actually, but how important is listening as well? Because I guess you need to make sure that you're able to couch that conversation in the right way, and then get the feedback so you can overcome any potential objections. Does listening feature quite heavily in discussing fees?
Selling is not telling, it's asking, and it's asking questions. And the more questions you ask, the more you'll learn about your patient. And to do that, you've got to be an incredible, brilliant listener. So but a lot of dentists listen to respond. So as they're listening to the patient, they're thinking what they're going to say back, and they stop listening. So listening to your patient's problems and understanding them and really showing empathy is absolutely crucial.
Yeah.
And dentists, we teach dentists how to sell without selling, and it's all based on the questions that you ask, how you build rapport, how you listen attentively to the answers, and it changes dentists, because they go back and say, it was incredible. I was listening more. I built better rapport with my patients. I understood. I created more opportunities. Mrs. Williams, a patient of mine for 20 years, told me some things she wanted to have done. And when I asked her, how come you never told me this in the past? She said, well, you never asked, or I didn't know it could be done.
Yeah.
So it happens all the time. So listening is the most important skill.
Do you know, you said something there that I think is a great phrase: selling's not telling.
Yeah.
I think that's I've never heard that before. I think that's a lovely phrase. Selling's not telling. Is asking.
Yeah,
it's brilliant.
And is there within dentistry, selling? I'm sure when you started back in the day, talking about sales in dentistry was quite edgy, and I think we have moved away from the hard sales tactics of cars and double glazing into a way more ethical approach, which the medical field needs. Is that something that you've seen a shift in the profession, that people are now way more comfortable having sales type conversations than they were back when you started?
I think the answer to your question is yes. But what I do is, and if I'm speaking at a conference, I'll always ask how many people here believe they're in sales, and only a quarter of the hands will go up. And then I've got to come talk to them about, well, don't you sell ideas every day? Don't you on health or treatment plans? Don't you want to, patients comes in with a problem, you want to try and talk to them about having this treatment. It's something they're going to definitely need and it's going to benefit them. So I say, don't you think you're selling ideas every single day? And then eventually they get it. But what I tend to do is give examples of how it's not selling and to teach them how to ask questions and how to listen. And once they get that, then they can really then understand, actually, we are doing this every day. That communication is, a massive part of their success. They can be great dentists. They can be technically brilliant at what they do. But if they can't convince the patient of the benefits of the treatment and what difference it's going to make to them, then they'll never deliver the dentistry they've always wanted to do. So to answer your question,
go into research.
Yeah. You have to talk to them about what actually what it actually is, and what the concept behind it is. And once they get that, then they understand.
Right. Yeah.
Do you find actually that some people are just unteachable?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. Yeah.
They're just closed doors, not really interested, can't change, don't want to change.
Well, luckily, I don't tend to meet many of those people. Because if they're on my course, they want to be there. So if I'm delivering a course here in my training centre here in Manchester, and I've got 25 delegates, the chances are everybody wants to be in the room. So if we've got a treatment coordinator, chances are she's working for a very forward-thinking client of mine, and she wants to be here. So we tend not to bump into too many of those people. But yeah, I will. And here's the thing,
because I know you do some work for like corporates and stuff like that. Who I don't know whether they are asked to come or whether they're invited to come, and therefore they might come in a bit of a closed mindset.
Well, I might deliver a half day or an hour lecture, and some of them come along and we have a chat with them after. And some of them are just not bothered. They want to just carry on as they're doing what they're doing at the moment. They've got no will to change. But normally, people that come and see me or hear me speak have got part of an interest. I've got some interest in developing themselves. So if they do come to a free lecture or free something, then they've got some interest there in making a difference. But yeah, I often, I'm. And here's the thing: the people that often need me the most don't actually end up taking my course.
Isn't that so true?
And it's so true.
They're almost pre-qualified by virtue of being in the room. They know they want to get better. They're interested in this as a topic, and they're probably already the top quarter. They're top quartile in terms of performance and they're just trying to get better. It's everybody else that could really benefit.
I'm just reflecting on this podcast. What great information we've given today. But they tend to blame circumstances and not themselves. So my area is different. My patients cannot afford private, or they'll blame head office. They'll blame the materials that they use. They'll blame the time of the year, Brexit, government. She gets all the best patients next door. I get all the rubbish. The list goes on and on and on.
Wow. Yeah, I think Carol Dweck's book Mindset covers that out quite nicely, doesn't it? Between fixed mindset and growth mindset.
We focus a lot on mindset on the course because it does make a big difference. Mindset's really important.
Yeah, kind of linked to that. You love nature. I see online you're out, fell walking, cycling, enjoying the outdoors. Can you draw
Ashley
a line?
Bear's latter.
Yeah. Can you draw a line between your business success and keeping yourself mentally fit? Is there a direct conduit between those two things?
Oh, absolutely, 100%. I try and exercise every day, and do something because, and often it sounds silly, but if I go on a 3 or 4 hour bike ride, if I'm on my own, often I come back with my best ideas. So I absolutely. I do 2 things every day, and I may have a day off on a Sunday where I might read the newspaper, but I read a positive book. I listen to something when I'm walking the dog, so I'm getting some ideas, and I exercise every day. So absolutely. And I sleep better because of it. So I try and go to bed at night when I'm absolutely not only exhausted mentally, but tired physically as well. And it impacts my sleep. If I don't sleep well, I don't function. I'm really rubbish if I don't sleep well. So, and I do travel a lot, I'm in the car a lot and I'm traveling. So all this does take a toll. So I absolutely could, mentally and physically, I'm doing something every day, 100%.
Fabulous, Ashley. It's been a joy.
Yeah,
Thank you
brilliant.
very much.
Thank you.
You're gonna get the treasured medal of not needing to answer our 2 questions at the end of this.
The one and only. In fact,
you're
one
the
and
only
only
person who's ever come on the podcast who doesn't need to answer those questions because you answered them before, and people can listen back to those answers on your previous episode. It's been a joy speaking with you, Ashley. Thank you for your time. I think the insights that you give people, and I think there's going to be so many little micro adjustments that people can listen to and just kind of change.
They should be open to change, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that's the thing. Be open to change and, come along and have a freebie and listen to how you might be able to change them and their financial position. And not necessarily just their finances, but their stress.
Yeah.
It's hard enough, isn't it, being a dentist and run a business?
Yeah.
Anything you can do to make it easier. Yeah. No, thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Ashley. Look after yourself.
Great.
Cheers, Ashley.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Dentology, where we discuss the business of dentistry. If you like what you heard, please do subscribe where you found this episode. That would be amazing. And also follow us on Instagram.